Welcome to the Interior Analysis Podcast. I am Jelani Kelly.
I'm Evan Westman.
And with us back for the fourth time, we have Ahsan Naazim joining us to talk about some Mortal Kombat. Welcome, Ahsan.
Thank you guys for having me.
Let's just jump right into I didn't write any initial reactions down because I was watching it with the fam and I was kind of just quote-unquote enjoying what was happening on screen. If y'all had any written down, feel free to express them now.
Yeah, I didn't have too much. I watched this at a friend's apartment with 3 other people, all of whom were, I don't want to say much more knowledgeable on Mortal Kombat, but they'd played a lot more. Actually, I have only played this game once, and oddly, or maybe not that oddly, I think it was with you, Jelani, like one time. We played like 3 rounds. Mm-hmm. I'm pretty sure that's the only time I've ever played. You probably kicked my ass pretty neatly because...
Is there probably about that?
I don't think there's much of a probably. I'm almost positive I died really early. It was not a lot. Like, I think it was bad enough that we were just like, all right, this is... we know how the rest of this is going to go. So,
it was a bit more even with Smash, but even then... I don't know.
Yeah, well, I've actually played Smash, so, like, I know what I'm doing with Smash. Anyway, that was, like, the extent of my experience with Mortal Kombat coming into this was 3 rounds against you that I lost. I have no idea who I played as. It was a while ago. But anyway, the people I watched it with, they knew a bit more about it than me. One of the guys was, like, kind of whispering, like, oh, there's that guy, like, every once in a while. Not being, like, really disruptive, but I could tell he was having a really different experience with it than me because he could actually, like, see what was happening, like, in terms of the game and, like, oh, this is, like, whatever, and all of that went way over my head. The only moments I really wanted to call out, I thought it was fun that they called out the spelling at the one point.
Oh.
Really quick moment. Liu Kang's fire effects, I don't know if you guys thought this, I thought they looked really fake, like cartoon level fake. Did you guys, like...
Yeah, I wasn't sure if that was me or not, because in the trailer, that was the first thing that stood out to me. And when I was in theater, it was a little bit harder to tell, but there was a few times where, like, it looked like it wasn't movie level quality.
Mm-hmm. It looked almost like an emoji, like when it was just sitting in his hand.
Yeah,
that's like exaggerating, but it didn't look real. Especially like it's 2021. We've had good fire effects for a while. I don't know what was going on with that, especially because like the rest of it looked pretty decent.
I didn't notice.
I mean, it wasn't a big problem. It just stood out to me. Only other thing, really, don't reference Harry Potter in a movie that has magic in it. You're running yourself into the Bright problem.
Oh, he called him Gandalf.
Oh, did that? Oh, I forgot about that.
Was that what you were talking about?
Gandalf is Lord of the Rings. There was a direct reference. He was
confused.
like, oh, no more like Harry Potter, whatever. I think Kano is the one who says it. And
of course.
It just, like, it just breaks your world in a weird way.
As many faults as this script has, I don't think that was the script's fault, because most of Kano's lines were improvised, I heard, after watching the movie.
Fair enough, but, like, we talked about this when we did one of the seasons of The Boys. Like, when you start referencing pop culture things in something that's already, like, a big other fantasy world within our world, it starts to kind of, like, just, it breaks the world building in a weird way. That's my reaction to it. Like, really small nitpick, but I think it's something that you can avoid and should. So, and just last thing, how do you guys think they cast this? Because I recognized nobody in this movie, which I find really strange for something that's this big. Like, I mean, it's not like gigantic, but it's a big studio movie, and they had no recognizable talent in this. So, like, why do you guys think that is?
That's a good question. I don't know the reason why, but there were only 2 actors that actually I recognized. It was the actor for Sub-Zero and the actor for Cole Young. I know Joe from The Raid Redemption, and there was another movie he was in. And
The Night Comes For Us.
I think that was it.
He was the lead in that.
Mm-hmm. And then I know Louis Tan from that show on Netflix that I'm blanking on the name of right now.
There's a lot of that show on
Woo
Netflix.
Assassins?
Yes, Woo Assassins. Yeah, it was okay. The main actor in Woo Assassins did a good job for what the script he had, but Louis Tan was his brother in that show. Yeah.
Okay. My brother and his friend recognized Mehcad Brooks, who was Jax. Apparently he was in Supergirl TV show.
I forgot about that, yeah.
I recognized Joe, and that was about the extent of it. I didn't know anybody else.
Okay, so at any rate, it sounds like the biggest people in this are kind of like, I think it's fair to call them like B-list stars. Like
Absolutely.
Someone you might recognize. Like those are decently high profile things. I just happen to have seen them. But in any case, like they didn't get anyone big enough to bother putting anyone's names on the posters or trailers or anything. So
I didn't think I realized that until you just said it.
I just thought it was strange because star power tends to be a big driving force behind a lot of marketing, even for, so there's some things where Bruce Willis is in 2 minutes of the movie and his name is big as life on the poster. It's just strange to me that they wouldn't have gone after somebody with some kind of, like, enough clout they could put their name on the poster to make this.
Mm-hmm.
That is a very good point. I'm wondering, I probably would have been very doubtful of the film if I saw, like, star power on it. Like, I saw celebrity casting for Chris Pratt as Johnny Cage. That was, like, a rumor. And I don't know how I would have felt. Like, because to me, I feel like the characters themselves have enough personality that, like, I don't want a celebrity star power to take away from it. Not saying Chris Pratt is a bad actor or anything, but I feel like if I saw Chris Pratt as Johnny Cage, I could only see him as Chris Pratt and not Johnny Cage. So for me,
I would see him more as like Star-Lord in that role.
It wouldn't feel as authentic. So I think for me, the unrecognizable B-list actors is one of the primary reasons why I was excited for the movie. But that's just I'm not speaking for everybody else, and that's just for me personally.
I think that's an effect that can happen though, like, because I hadn't really thought about like who they could put in it, but I think you're right. If like Chris Pratt or somebody, who was known for other roles came in, I think that I've more heard this than I know it to be like factually true, but I think there are times when a role is written, they get an actor attached, and then they kind of rewrite the role to fit the actor so that like they can like, capitalize on what makes that actor popular. So I can see how that might have limited, or I don't know about limited, but I think it's a choice that maybe they were trying to avoid.
Well, how do you think it would have been if they would have marketed, like, to Mortal Kombat fans, Louis Tan is Cole Young? Like, that wouldn't look good either.
Right. I'm not saying it's a bad choice for how they marketed it.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's an interesting choice, though, that they didn't, like, I'm sure if they wanted to, Warner Brothers could have probably found willing stars of some level. Like, you give them a big enough paycheck, they probably come on and be whoever they ask them to be. Here's a question I was wondering in terms of the casting. Like, do all of the characters look accurate to the video game?
Yes.
Because I was wondering if maybe
except Rico.
Who is that?
The Warhammer general that fought Jax with the metal arms.
Okay.
You
guys are going to have to be reminding me of names this entire
time,
time, because there's only about 4 that I remember. So.
Yeah, he had the cat scratches on his face, and he was just yelling the entire time, and he had a hammer. That was it.
Okay.
He got his head clapped.
I just thought it was curious that they didn't have big talent. I think maybe for this kind of movie, it works. I mean, it doesn't seem like it's hurting sales, but I think it could have only helped. So it's just a curious decision.
Yeah, I agree. It is a very interesting point you made. I'm trying to think, like, would that have... I wonder, like, who they would cast as some of these characters. I feel like a lot of, like, the A-listers aren't necessarily good at doing fight scenes. But I have something about that later I want to get into.
Well, Vin Diesel could have voiced Goro.
Yeah, Goro's the dude with the 4 arms, right?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. Vin Diesel would make sense. But does that guy even have any lines?
I think he just roars. Most of the designs were good, though. Besides
was that them paying homage to his Nightwing mask when Jax punched him in the head? Was that, like, that side profile shot? Did you notice that?
I didn't.
There was, like, when Jax was, like, punching his head, there's a shot where like there was just blood on his left eye, and it was shaped like a Nightwing mask. And I was like, is that them paying like, I don't know, tribute to his mask? I'm like, come on.
So they knew what it should have looked like then.
Yeah.
So, all right, whatever. Most of the designs were fantastic, though. Like, just in general. Kung Lao, Cabal, people really liked Cabal.
Yeah.
Like, not even just his design, which was dope. The actor or whoever was playing him, you don't see his face, so I don't know who it was. But apparently, he sounded like he was from Brooklyn. The way that dude was talking was pretty hilarious.
My quick impressions, I think they did what they're supposed to do, not in the best of ways, but I think they did a good job at just, going to the major beats, sticking to the source material as close as possible. But there's some things I want to get into in terms of like how they adapted the story. But the one thing I will give them, they kept the plot minimal and focused more on the action. There's a good fight to story ratio, and you could tell that the budget was very low in comparison to a lot of Hollywood films. But surprisingly, Goro looked a lot better than I thought he was going to look. If you compare him to the original movie, that's a huge upgrade. And I think that's where most of the money went to, if I'm being honest.
He looked like Shrek mixed with the Hulk, like the 2003 Hulk.
Oh, yeah. And as far as like video game movie adaptations go, I think this isn't a step forward, but I think the way that this is a step forward is that it's on the big scale like this in the movie theater. Sonic kind of did this the way it was promoted and marketed, and it got a lot of people in the box office. I don't know the sales for this movie, but I think this did a really good job in terms of like exposure for the video game world. There's a lot more eyes. Like a lot of people in my personal close circle who aren't fans of Mortal Kombat, I know actually went to go see this movie. So
really,
that's all. Yeah. So that's all I got for like my first impressions.
Let's jump into that topic first, since that's connected to story. And watching this from the outside looking in as a non-MK fan, well, I'm going to swear here because this was a rated R movie. The story must have seemed batshit insane. If you know nothing about the Mortal Kombat world, the fact that there's a tournament and all of these fantastical creatures, apparently there's a different world and other realms and all that, there's gods. And Evan, I want to hear from your point of view what the hell you thought was going on, bro.
I'll admit I was a little bit lost with some of it. I didn't try like super hard to keep up because I figured like, it's a video game movie. I'm not expecting it to be super like heavy on plot, not a lot of substance. Of course, I have no reference point to speak of for what like it should be compared to the source material, that kind of thing. I did kind of get the sense though that this isn't necessarily something that was made for non-fans like me. Like it didn't, there's some things where like stuff has been adapted and I can kind of feel it like trying to catch up people who are not familiar with the source materials. Like there's some things where it like kind of assumes you know what this thing is, and sometimes where they're just like, we're gonna act like you know nothing. This kind of felt like it was erring more on the side of like, we're gonna expect that you've played before. The only thing that like really stood out to me, I was able to like track with, okay, there's like fantastical things at the tournament. That all like basically made sense. Where I had a question was, is it really just decided by who gets a 10-game win streak first? Because there was a line about halfway through where somebody said something that made it sound like that. They were like, they've won 9 if they win 10. So I was like, hold up. I think I said it out loud and like asked the room I was in. I was like, is it really just 10 games in a row? And that's really it?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, so like these different like,
I mean, for a video game that makes sense. Just translating that into a story just comes off like it doesn't translate. Fantastic.
Even in the video games, it doesn't make sense.
It doesn't.
But it's at least a game, so like you can have fun with, like, that's how games work.
Yeah. Like, so, in order to merge realms, which is what they want to do, with Earth Realm, do they ever explain why they want to do that with Earth Realm?
I think it's like just conquer.
So.
Okay.
Conquer. Yeah.
Vague villain plan.
Yeah, to expand their domain and all that, and empire.
Even though Outworld's like mad empty.
Yeah. Especially based on this movie, you just see a bunch of desert. It looks pretty similar to Earth, actually, in my opinion. But Yeah, it's 10-game win streak, and you get to merge realms and expand. The winner gets to expand their realm.
So pretty much the different realms or worlds, if you will, they compete in tournaments, and whoever wins 10 times in a row gets to take over the realm that they're battling. So the way the games go has always been this way. Outworld is trying to take over Earthrealm, which is where we live, and they have won 9 out of 10. On the 10th one is usually when the story starts off. That's when Mortal Kombat 1, the initial one, starts off. And every new tournament, Earth has to find new champions to represent them in the tournament. Obviously, we've lost the first 9, so these new set of heroes in the 10th tournament are 10 set of heroes that will fight for the tournament. Evidently, in this movie, they won, so that's how the games go. Earth always wins, and then that results in Outworld trying to find other ways to conquer Earth that break the rules and defy the elder gods, so to speak. And that's why it gets more complicated and other Earths and other realms kind of get involved. So, but they kept it very simple, even though it was very complex or complicated in this movie. They try to keep it very bare bones, but they didn't do a good job at explaining that to newcomers.
Yeah, which I was okay with. The only thing that I thought the reason I would have liked having a better establishment of some of those rules was that there was and what the context around the tournament was. The tournament doesn't actually happen. It's just there's a few instances where the Outworld people come up and they're we're here, and everyone's wait, but you're breaking the rules. And that sucks for you then.
And then they did the exact same thing in the end.
Right.
We're going to split them up and do this before the tournament, even though this is all about the tournament.
Which, by the way, that should not have worked because they just started training that day. And they're killing people from Outworld who have been fighting for how many years or decades or whatever.
Goro. We'll get into that.
Yeah.
Can you guys give me some context real quick on is that different than the games? Ahsan, it sounded like you were saying maybe they do break the rules sometimes in the game, but I don't know. How did you guys feel in terms of them being all right, we're not gonna wait for the tournament. We're just gonna let's beat them now while they're weak.
I was okay with it at first when they said, okay, we're gonna break the rules. It's cool. I was expecting that to happen. The only reason why I was not okay with it was for 2 reasons. One, they were hyping the tournament up and we never saw it. So in screenwriting or filmmaking, I don't like that at all. I don't like
Chekhov's gun.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And number 2, they took them to iconic Mortal Kombat locations and didn't really use them. So to make that kind of clear for any newcomer listening, the scene with Jax and Rico when they're fighting on the bridge, that scene's called the Pit. It's a stage in Mortal Kombat that's very familiar and fan favorite amongst fans.
Since the first game.
Yeah. What happens is when you win, you could punch the opponent off the bridge and they fall into the Pit of Spikes. It's very gory and fans love that. The thing is, why are you going to show the Pit and not use the Pit? You know what I mean? You're going to kill them on the bridge and not really use it. A lot of fans were not happy about that because that's an iconic location and they didn't even utilize it. The equivalent of that is showing Avengers Tower and not going inside Avengers Tower. It would be like Spider-Man just swinging by the building and you see the A and you never go inside there. It's an equivalent I could kind of draw up. Evan, does that make sense at all? The bridge that they were fighting?
I think so. I can okay. I of course had no idea that was a reference to anything when I saw it, but I think I understand what you mean. It's it was something that fans maybe weren't sure were going to be in it, but they showed it and then didn't do the whole thing with it. So I can see how that kind of thing's frustrating if you're a fan.
Absolutely. Because the stages are randomized in the game, so when you get to a stage, it's oh, I'm finally at this stage. If I win, I could do a special fatality and kill him in a cool way that I couldn't do on other stages. And the Pit was one of those stages where if you win, you can kill them in a way that's just different than knocking them out,
And why was Jax the only one that went somewhere special?
I don't know.
How big of a I'm just going to use the word transgression. I don't know if that's the best one, but how big of a transgression do you guys feel it was for them to not actually have the tournament at the end? Was that a big problem for you two as people who are more familiar?
Kind of.
A little bit. If for me, it bothered the filmmaker and me more so than the fan. Because you're mentioning the tournament a lot and we don't see it.
Yeah.
So thank you for pointing that out. I was on my notes that none of the fights took place during the tournament. So let's roll from the story as a non-MK fan into the story compared to the source material. So the addition of Arcana, I wasn't mad at because I don't think they ever explained in the first games how any of the human characters like Sonya, Johnny, Kano, and Liu Kang could do what they do, because they had special powers in the very first game, but I don't think it was ever explained why Liu Kang could shoot fire from his hands. I think in later games they explained kind of how some of them do that, but that was like one of the biggest additions to this, and the whole dragon tattoo marking, birthmark or whatever thing that transfers, that was also new and connected to Arcana.
Yeah, I wasn't mad at the Arcana at all. I think I'll give them credit for trying to. I'm never mad at an artist like going their route with telling their version of the story. It doesn't have to be one-to-one accurate. I'm completely okay with that. So the Arcana was completely fine with me. I guess when it starts to become kind of shaky is when it feels like they're trying to make it easy for newcomers to digest, but then they also take steps back by not making it clear for newcomers. Like, you make the Arcana very clear for why these guys have powers. It also kind of explains it for the gamers. Like, we don't know why Sonya could shoot pink things off her arm. That makes no sense, you know? So, but then again, you don't explain why Sub-Zero, for example, lives centuries without, like, aging. You don't explain that. You don't explain what Outworld is. You just say, oh, here's Outworld. Like, at some point, it becomes that line of, like, you just tell the story, you just make us accept it. Like Godzilla and King Kong, you just say, here's a gorilla, here's a lizard, they're really big, they fight. You gotta have to accept that, and you kind of just move on with it. It works at some points, but sometimes you have to walk that line of either are you catering to the fans or are you catering to newcomers. And I feel like this movie diverts between who was trying to cater to.
I don't think it did a good job at catering it either, in my opinion.
Exactly. I think they made a film that they thought many would like, and they need to make a film that they know a few would love.
Yeah.
And I think that's the issue that they made. So.
I think
there's a way to do it where you can, like, I'm speaking more about like book adaptations. I think it's different with a video game, especially one like this where it's mostly just 1v1 fights. I think when you're adapting a book, a lot of times it's just the story but simplified. Like, the ones I think of most of the time are the Harry Potter books. Like, the first couple of those are almost exactly what the books are. But, like, you can... The great thing about that movie series, and I'm much more of a fan of the books, but you can watch all of those movies and you're not missing anything. Like, you're missing a lot of information from the books, but the movies, like, only reference themselves. So they're not suddenly adding something in from the book that wasn't set up before. So, like, the movies are kind of like they're like an abridged version of the books almost. So, like, that kind of is something where there are people who only watch the movies in that series, and that's the only way they experience it. But people who have read the books can also watch it, and you know, they might not like it as much. I personally don't like the movies as much, but I feel like I'm watching the books. Like, I don't feel like it's getting away from it. I don't feel like it's disservicing what the books are in most cases. So I don't think they're necessarily mutually exclusive, but it does seem like it's maybe harder because they have less of like a traditional story template to go off of with a video game. You guys can probably speak better to that, but that's the sense that I've gotten.
Let's compare. Do you know what the hell was happening in those beginning 8 minutes? Or why any of it
Yeah,
happened?
I was really lost in those first 8 minutes. I didn't know who I was supposed to be rooting for most of it until like Sub-Zero. It took me a minute, and then I was like, okay, the ice dude, and I knew he was Sub-Zero from the trailers. So I was like, okay, he must be Sub-Zero, and he just killed this whole guy's family. That's like the kick in the dog moment. I guess he's the bad guy.
But do you know why? Because we don't either. For this movie, we don't know either.
Yeah. The reasoning is different in the game.
This man says for the Lin Kuei. Do you know what the Lin Kuei are, or the Shirai Ryu, Evan?
Do you?
We do. But I'm saying, as an outside person watching this movie, they never explain what that is, and he says it twice in moments like before he dies and after he kills Scorpion in the beginning. He says for the Lin Kuei. As an outside person, you don't know what the fuck that means, do you?
Nope. But I was also I think a lot of this, like I think I'm being lighter on this movie than I probably would be because I have a hard time distinguishing between what did I just miss and what did they not
Nope.
like do well. That's something that I figured I just missed. It sounds like
Nope.
they did a bad job with it and I just wasn't paying attention to that.
I felt like they were just trying to drop hints for a sequel, like
Oh,
little
yeah, for
things
sure.
like that.
I could
I
tell
feel like
that
they're
even.
Yeah, I feel like they're trying to branch out to get as many people in the seats as they could, so that way when they get the budget and the green light for multiple sequels or one sequel, they can kind of delve in on certain aspects of the plot. That's kind of what it felt like. It felt like kind of like a, I don't want to call it a cash grab because it definitely didn't feel like that, but I think they were trying to just open up the floodgates for more fans a little bit.
That okay, so I think when we talked about it before, son, you said that's why they threw so many characters in, so many one-off villains that you might not even remember by name. They also never beat Shang Tsung, who was clearly the biggest bad of them all for right now. Raiden just teleported him away and said he talks too much when... Okay, Raiden's a whole nother issue.
Yeah, we're going to get into that.
But I could see that. But still, as far as this movie goes, first of all, in the original, there's this other third guy between the rivalry between Scorpion and Sub-Zero, Evan.
Okay.
His name is Quan Chi. His name's not really important, but he's like a demon sorcerer hell guy person, man. And he poses as Sub-Zero and kills Scorpion's family. So that was originally supposed to be this third guy that poses as his rival, Scorpion's rival, Sub-Zero, and kills Scorpion's family and then points the finger and says, no, that wasn't me. That was actually Sub-Zero that did that. And then Scorpion makes a deal with him to come back to life and then wreak vengeance on Sub-Zero in turn. Okay. But the clans had already been fighting.
They skipped that part.
Yeah, the clans
basically.
they didn't even add that character to the story, but the clans had already been fighting for years, which they also didn't establish. But Sub-Zero is from the Lin Kuei clan, clan of assassins, and then Scorpion was from the Shirai-Ryu, a different clan of assassins. And yeah, they didn't explain any of that. All they said was for the Lin Kuei, and then Scorpion died. So now you know, it kind of, if I explain that.
Yeah, I think I know how people feel now when I talk about, when I try to explain what happens in the Fisher job and Inception to people.
Mm-hmm.
I think I know how that feels now.
Yeah.
I kind of follow, but I'll confess I wouldn't be able to spit it back to you.
No, that's fine.
But I think I get it.
Yeah. Listen, man, Sub-Zero is supposed to have a younger brother as well. Don't know how he's supposed to have a younger brother in the sequels, because when Scorpion comes back and he kills Sub-Zero like he did in this movie, there's a second Sub-Zero, that his younger brother, that takes up the Sub-Zero mantle, and he's a kinder and non-evil Sub-Zero. He's not even mentioned in this movie. He never grew up with him over the centuries for some reason that Sub-Zero was living. Doesn't make any damn sense.
It doesn't sound to me like there's any reason they can't bring him in.
The only thing I could think of is they would have to either make him his son that he just fathered within like the past decade,
Right.
or maybe like a descendant or something, kind of like Cole Young is to Scorpion. That's what I could foresee. I just feel like they're reaching at that regard, but you know, whatever to get him in the movie, you know.
Let's switch gears for a second and talk about some of the characters. Let's begin with the most useless audience insert.
Rated.
Well,
Go ahead, my fault.
I'm not mad at that either. But for the story, yes, he was. Cole Young. He is supposed to be the audience character that learns about whatever the hell this is, you know, as the audience does. My problem, and several people's issue with this character, is that they already have multiple characters from the games that could have taken this role. But they just...
And so he's not from the games?
No. They decided to create an entirely new character. People were speculating left and right. Oh, it's really this character. Well, they could be related to Scorpion, or it could be, you know... There's a new character from Mortal Kombat X, the one before the one that we played together, I believe, Evan, named Takeda, that people thought it would have been perfect if he was Scorpion's descendant, because he actually trains under Scorpion in the comics and the games, and he's actually a really well-received new character in the games. Nope. They gave him Wonder Woman's armor, or just actual literal plot armor. And
I thought it was more like Black Panther's armor.
No.
That's what me and the people I was watching.
Power-wise, yes. But I saw a meme.
And the look, I guess it looks a little more like Wonder Woman's.
Yeah, I saw a meme today that said this man's turned out to be the bronze kneecap from from Fairly Odd Parents, bro. Oh my god. I had forgotten all about that character, but that makes so much sense. Also, this man's... So, I've been writing... again, to my writing thing real quick. I've been writing my shonen series, and apparently, like, I'm looking up tropes and how to subvert those tropes for shonen and all that, and, you know, reversals and all this stuff. You don't want to have your main character lose their first fight, because that's not going to instill any faith in them from the very beginning. Like, as an audience member, you're going to be like, oh, this guy...
Really?
Yeah. That's what I read.
Keep going, but I'm going to push back on that later.
Yeah. You're going to be like, oh, this guy kind of, okay, he just took an L in the first thing we see him in. Okay, that's not really instilling any confidence. But he continues to take L's left and right like he's the Mandalorian in both seasons. And his first dub, his first win in this movie is against a character they didn't even show in his entirety when they first mentioned his name. Goro, the four-armed dude that opened the doors when Shang Tsung called his name from across that long bridge. I don't know how he heard him. Goro is supposed to be the current champion of the Mortal Kombat tournament, and why Outworld won 9 tournaments in a row up until that point. This man's Cole Young lost to a regular dude in the beginning of this movie, and taking L's all the way up until the point where he fought Goro, he wins in that fight with his armor that he just got from seeing his family almost get crushed to death. Dog.
So, I think we have kind of the same issue. Well, let's see, because I had frustrations with Cole as well, but there's sort of like parallel but not the same to yours, because I actually liked the choice to hold off his first win. I'm not familiar with shonen, so I don't know how it relates to that and like what tropes and conventions it's messing with. Mm-hmm. But I liked that he was struggling as a fighter, and I was thinking back to 2 other movies specifically where I think they have more to the arc than this, but Spider-Verse and Kingsman, the protagonists in those, Eggsy and Miles, they have arcs that largely center around them just becoming better fighters. But I like how they do it in that, where, like, you know, the reason that the leap of faith, what's up danger scene in Spider-Verse is so powerful, I think, is because they've held off him, like, being able to step into his role as Spider-Man until that point. He's kind of been whiffing and messing up for the entire first hour and a half of the movie. So then it's really cool when we see him finally get to do it, and they like have a good development with it. And, you know, they do a similar thing with Eggsy in Kingsman, where like he's a bit like skilled to begin, but he's kind of like a lower class kind of guy, and then, you know, third act of the movie, he's coming in full James Bond getup with the umbrella and everything.
I mean, but he also does that swimming thing. I don't know many people.
Right? Yeah, he's maybe not a perfect example because he has skills to begin with, but in terms of his like transformation, I like that they hold it off until he's like, you know, as he's struggled with it a bit. I don't think that's like the greatest arc ever, but the fact that he is losing at the beginning, I started off seeing that and I was like, oh, this might be a pretty cool arc with it. I think the problem isn't so much the timing of those things. I think there's a lack of development in between. And I wish they had. So if you're okay with it, I'm going to get into my like big question for this movie. Do we think this would have been better if there had been a stronger arc for Cole? Because I think there was potential for it to be stronger, but they don't really capitalize on the opportunities that they create for themselves. So, you know, it's a video game movie. It's mostly about the fighting. We're not really expecting a character arc, but I felt myself wanting one. So I want to hear what you guys think. Do you think they could have made it better if, like, they did an arc with him? Just, I think the simplest and most obvious one would be, like, he's worried at the beginning about being able to protect his family. That's like a insecurity for him. And by the end, he is able to do that. Pretty simple. And they lean towards it, but they never really commit to that arc. So do you guys think it would have been better if they had developed that more?
I think it would be a better movie. I question whether or not the hardcore fans would respond to that. But that's irrelevant to how well the movie itself is. I just can obviously see a lot of fans being upset that a random, quote-unquote, no-name character that doesn't really exist in the video games universe is taking the spotlight off of the characters that we really want to see.
Mm-hmm. But they were kind of already doing that by including him, I think. Yeah, so I don't know that there's a lot to lose in that sense.
I mean, the poster has Scorpion and Sub-Zero's face in front and center, separated by a kunai knife. But, you know, it's not really about them. It's kind of misleading.
Because that's my issue with Cole. I don't hate Cole as a character, but in terms of a plot, that's where my issue is. Because you have a character that this centers around, but you don't really make him feel like the main character. So what's the point? And it kind of goes back to what I said earlier, how they're teetering that line of trying to cater to the fans, but also welcome newcomers, but they're not really doing either the greatest.
It feels like maybe they got some studio notes on both sides of it, and they kind of like just made a mishmash of those a little bit.
It definitely does.
Because I don't think it would have been I don't think this is a premise where you kind of can't make a decent cohesive story out of this. I think there's a good version that pleases both crowds out there. This is not that version. It's not terrible, but I don't think it like we're saying, like both you two as fans and me as a non-fan, we both have frustrations with it.
I think there is a version of this out there that could have gotten fans on board with Cole. And as much as I'm complaining about the movie, I tried to go in with an open mind, and like I said, I was accepting of the whole Arcana thing, which was never prevalent in the games, and all these changes. Like, Kano doesn't have his cybernetic eye, but that connects to the Arcana thing. That laser, Evan, that shoots out of his eyes, actually, that's supposed to be that he's supposed to have like a cybernetic piece of equipment that's on like that entire side of his face, and
like Cyborg.
Yeah, exactly like that. I was fine with that change. I don't know how you could improve his arc to make it so it's believable that he could beat anybody at the end of this movie. I was thinking maybe just have him kick a bunch of people's asses throughout the thing. Give him a better power than whatever the hell they gave him. They gave him freaking Black Panther's, like Evan said, Black Panther's suit that looks like Wonder Woman's armor from Wonder Woman 84. Like, I think maybe that would be a way to go about it. Like, have him just kick ass from the beginning. Like, oh, who's this new guy? Okay, he may not be anybody from the game, but, like, they're trying to make it so he's, you know, give him a believable power that makes it so he's able to combat these actual otherworldly beings.
So it sounds to me like you think it would have been better to not really give him an arc. Just in terms of, like, making him a formidable opponent for everyone. I guess.
Yeah, I don't think there would be enough time to give him an arc with all these characters people want to see in this movie. Like, he would have to be even more of a focus if he had a bigger arc in this. Like,
Yeah, that's definitely true. Because I think the main problem with him in this is, like, that they decide to have him escalate and then don't give enough time for him to naturally get better.
Right.
Even though he's a fighter at the beginning, he's way outclassed
the whole
time.
Exactly.
And then gets his immediate glow up And like, yeah, so I would prefer, because like in both the two examples that I mentioned, namely Kingsman, like we spend a lot of time with Eggsy like he goes through the entire process of like being trained as a Kingsman. So when he's like tearing it up in Valentine's Bond villain fortress at the end, we can buy it because we know he's been through like months of that. Whereas Cole, it's been about a week, so it doesn't hit the same. Like I felt the same like disbelief that you did there. But I personally, and again, I think this is the fan non-fan thing coming in, I would have liked a stronger arc from him. But I do agree with your point that if we had a stronger arc from him, we would have had so much less time with the characters from the actual game. So I think maybe the solution really, like best of both worlds, is to do what you were saying and make one of those characters who kind of apparently fills that role from the original game. Just have him be what they had Cole be.
Could have had Johnny Cage. That's what people thought he would have been, just under a different name. But Johnny Cage was mentioned at the end when he said he was going to Hollywood. Johnny Cage is a film actor turned Mortal Kombat fighter. And in Mortal Kombat 9, which was the reboot of the series that came out in 2011, I don't remember, they had Johnny Cage fill that role where he didn't believe anything that was happening. He was just like, my agent just brought me to this tournament and I don't really know what the hell's going on, but I'm able to shoot green shit out of my hands and all that. He was that character, and that's what people wanted for this movie, but they were like, nope, we're just going to tease him at the end. Stryker, terrible character because he's just a plain old cop. He doesn't have any powers whatsoever. He just has a gun. Also would have been a possibility, probably not widely accepted possibility, but a possibility nonetheless. There are other characters I can't even think of by name. There's some characters they probably could have moved some things around with this any other character's backstory to make it fit so they're more like a fish out of water type thing, learning this tournament as they go along. They could have just stuck with, they honestly could have stuck with Sonya, Jax, and Kano. Because they didn't seem to know what the hell was going on either. Like, entirely. Sonya was a skeptic before they found Raiden's temple. Like, they still didn't know exactly whatever the hell was going on with the tournament and all that. She thought it could have been a myth still, but she had all that crazy theory stuff up in the wall. And
her wall of exposition.
Right. Like, they could have just stuck with those three.
I just think the best of both worlds approach is a good idea. The only other option, this is like a curveball I could think of for Cole Young, you kind of said it, Jay, was for Cole to become Takeda, which is essentially Scorpion's protege, so to speak.
Yep, and he has cooler powers and abilities.
They kind of, like, his costume looks not like it, but you can see, like, the similarities, and then he has, like, the wrist weapons as well. You could have had the spear or whatever. So and he even had the kunai in the beginning, so, like, the pieces were there.
Could have been so cool. Raiden, real quick. I've never seen a plot hole as a character before, but if anyone fills those shoes, Raiden is it. Jesus Christ. It's like he was making up the rules as he went along.
He was the lightning guy, right?
Yep, there you go.
Yep.
Okay.
Teleporting people. He was like, I cannot interfere with the tournament, but you can teleport everyone individually so we can jump them, right? Yes. What? Doug, Kung Lao didn't have to die. There were so many outs with that, but they were... First of all, I didn't see it coming. I normally see stuff like that coming. Ahsan, you said you saw it coming.
Yeah, me and my brother, for some reason, both saw it coming. We don't know why. But...
Yeah, my dad said he saw it coming, too. Liu Kang could have just shot a fireball at him. We've seen... He burned Cabal alive with a fire dragon. And this man stood still as his friend got his soul sucked from him. Cole was like, no, Liu Kang, it's too late. Like, Shang Tsung hadn't even started his like, fatality or anything yet. And they just stood there and looked at him. Raiden could have teleported Kung Lao away. He could have done what he did to Shang Tsung at the end and just teleported Shang Tsung away. But what did he do? We don't know. Raiden wasn't there for that whole thing where the Outworld Warriors showed up. Like, once the barrier was down, Raiden was just like, oh, the barrier's down? Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah, like, he stopped them once, and then once they, like, persisted. He was like, wow, man, these kids, man, they don't give up. Like, they just chilled out.
That was the whole equivalent of like somebody saying, hey, let's do this. No, I don't really feel like doing that, but I want to do it. Well, since you say so. That, like, what?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, bro. Like, come
All
on.
they did was
you gotta be consistent with the rules there.
Yeah.
Like
If you
the
ever
rules
put their
he's
rhythm,
yeah.
I figured out why we know Kung Lao was gonna die. I think the clues to me was that he was the only character, minus Sub-Zero if you want to count it, that we've seen a fatality from at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Well, no, sorry, Kano did a fatality to the reptile, but in terms of like power structures, he was clearly on another level in comparison to the main cast on the good
That's
guy
a really
side.
good point.
And he was very outclassed. We saw his fatality, we heard his backstory, and we even got 2 decent fights from him. One with was it Cole Young, I think it was, and then he fought Nitara for that 2-second
That
fight
wasn't a
scene.
fight.
So we saw a good amount of him. So I think that's why we saw it coming. Because if there were going to be a tournament, I was like, who would he fight that would be fair? I was thinking Goro, like the games, but I guess that wasn't going to happen.
Nope. It was still cool to see. Like, I even saw a clip of it a few days after the movie of him doing the MKX fatality. I was like, yes, god damn it. It was awesome to see.
Yeah.
And then he said flawless victory. For once, like during the old movies, whenever they said flawless victory, it wasn't because somebody got hit at some point. But in this one, like, okay, Nitara, they mentioned her like twice. I don't even remember she had any speaking lines, but they said, I think Cabal made a joke about her screeching like a banshee and just flying around. And then she did that exact same thing when they all came into Raiden's temple. And then she just got clapped. What was the point in like, oh my god. Let's move past that. Raiden sucked. The rules, actually, you know what? I'm not that mad about Raiden, because the rules were never clear with Raiden very much from the beginning anyway. Because he's a playable character since the very first game. But apparently gods aren't allowed to fight in the tournament. But he does.
So the game's just been breaking its own rules from the word go.
Yes, very much so.
Like. Okay, so then let's not fault the movie too hard if the source material is breaking the rules.
Yeah.
To be fair, the story doesn't really fight too much. It's only the games you can play as him.
That's true. Let's get into the real meat of the story, the action. Ahsan told me this. Joe Taslim, the actor for Sub-Zero, who killed it, by the way, him and Kano and Cabal, I really say more Kano and I think Kung Lao did a good job, and Sub-Zero were like my top 3. Apparently he was too fast for his co-stars, physically fighting-wise.
Yeah. The actor for Macabre Brooks said him and Bruce Lee, Joe Taslim and Bruce Lee, the only 2 actors to have ever been told to slow down for the camera.
Wow.
Yeah.
He really bodied this role, and he signed on for 4 more films. I'll explain why he signed on for 4 more films. It'll make sense in a second. But I'm not trying to be funny, but like the way he like looks at his opponent, like when he's grabbing Jax's arms, if you rewatch that scene, like the glare he's giving him, anytime he's on screen, he literally steals like the show. Like his presence is always felt in every scene he's in. When you have a mask as an actor, you lose like the ability to translate emotion through your face because it's harder. You have to show it in your eyebrows and your eyes, and it looks funny. It's not like an easy thing to do. I think he did a really good job of making that convincing and not like something that you could laugh at, if that makes sense.
I still remember the look, even though it was in the trailer, I beamed when I saw it in the movie. When Jack shot the shotgun and he froze it and looked at the bullets.
Yeah.
One of the best shots to be in because you can tell he's like confused but also smiling through the mat. Like, bro, he pulled it off.
It could have been really campy and corny, kind of like the originals were, how like the visual acting through the masks. But I think Joe did an incredible job at just making Sub-Zero someone to be scared of. Like every time they mentioned his name, Jax even said like, "Yo, we can't fight him 1-on-1." Like everyone was scared of him. There was a clear power distinction, and I love when like the script and dialogue say something about a character, and then you as a viewer are able to visually see that to verify what's being said. And I think Joe did an incredible job. So
also, Cole's plan fell apart because of him. He was like, we'll save Sub-Zero for last. We'll just jump them together, and then he just fights him alone because his family got taken. Like, bro, stick to your own plan, please. I wanted to see more from Scorpion versus Sub-Zero. Still a cool fight. The fight scenes
I agree.
did feel kind of short a bit. There were a lot of them, but they were short. Like Jax versus Reiko, I think Jax flawless victoried him because he broke his hammer and then punched him down to the ground and punched him a few more times and then clapped his head between his metal hands. And that was it. Nitara versus Kung Lao. I don't even know if you could call that a fight.
I have a hot take.
Yeah.
Every fight scene without Sub-Zero and Scorpion was subpar to me.
I'm not mad at it.
If Kung Lao and Liu
disagree.
Kang, if Kung Lao and Liu Kang were not in this movie, this would have been a really bad rating for me. I think Liu Kang and Cabal scenes were passable. I really liked them because it visually looked really cool and reminded me of the games. Kung Lao didn't get a lot of fight scenes, but every scene he was in, the way he looked just like Kung Lao. Like the hat hit his face, all of his emotions.
His intro when he teleported under the hat.
Evan, I'm gonna nerd out, but the way Kung Lao looked was completely accurate to the game. So I think that's why it's
he simultaneously looked like all the Kung Laos across the game.
Yes, yeah. Sub-Zero Scorpion's fight I wish was longer, like Jay said. But anytime those two were on screen, the fights, Sub-Zero specifically, the fights were great. All the villains were killed off very easily. There were one-note fight scenes. There was no back and forth. Jax and Rico's fight was very much one-sided. Goro was hyped up and killed by, like, Jay kind of bodied that point. So I can't even, like, add anything to that because Jay said it very well. But Goro was killed by nobody, basically. And I don't like the fact that they added a reptile into the movie. And he got killed by 3... I'll call them inexperienced fighters at that point because Reptile burnt the crate to get into the building with acid and then hid in amongst the shadows and then fought them in close quarters. If you're a reptile that can spit acid and you're invisible, why would you come down and fight them hand to hand? Why would you not spit acid
zone
in
them.
the shadows? Yes, like if you could spit acid and melt a metal crate, spit it at them, you'll melt their skin easily. To me, it's like if you didn't want to go that route because it's too OP, then don't put him in the movie.
Right.
Don't
or
like,
make him human.
Don't make it so that it's easier for the main characters to win because then it doesn't really feel like they won. I was like, why wasn't he spitting acid? That was the one thing I gave Kong and Godzilla. Side note is that Godzilla kept shooting his fire breath at Kong. He didn't stop. I was afraid that they were gonna like make Godzilla be a little weaker to make the fight even. Like I don't like when they do that. So, but yeah, sorry for that little tangent, but that really annoyed me.
No problem.
I do not like when they do stuff like that.
Kano. Let's talk about Kano real quick. I think he stole the show, along with Sub-Zero, of course, and Kung Lao. Throughout every game, I have never once liked Kano. Playing as Kano,
I agree.
I don't like him as a character. He's meant to be a despicable piece of shit. He is not trustworthy, obviously. You saw the movie. He does everything literally for money and to save his own ass. Kano only cares about Kano. I don't know the actor's name, but he did a fantastic job at making me give a shit when he was on screen because he was, well, for one, hilarious. My favorite line was when, and I told Ahsan this already, was when they met Liu Kang when they first arrived at Raiden's temple and Liu Kang was speaking in Proverbs and Liu Kang just, when Kano asked the question, he walked up to him and touched his shoulder. He was like, the fuck?
Yeah.
A lot of his stuff just felt like genuine reactions. The man's got his power over an egg roll. Like, come on, bro. Yeah, that actor did a great job. Anything else for action or any characters you want to mention, bring up, shout-outs to?
I had one thing for the action. On the whole, I'd say it was decent. I didn't notice a lot of the gripes you guys had with it, but I agree with them. My main gripe with the action was there was the scene where everyone was fighting at the temple and then Cole was fighting Goro at his house, and they cross-cut those two scenes. I don't think they should have cross-cut them. Those two scenes didn't have any bearing on each other. They were happening at the same time, so like in terms of time, that makes sense. But I thought it would have been better to have them be two separate fight scenes. It felt like it detracted from both of them to cross-cut them. And I really I love cross-cut sequences when they're called for. Like when you have like two scenes like happening parallel that are impacting each other, like that is some of like my favorite things in, like, some of my favorite scenes in all movies do that. I don't think this was the time to do a cross-cut fight scene. They really don't matter to each other, so I think it would have been better to have them both play out in their entirety separately.
It was also really strange looking at what happened. Cole went back home because he gave up. He went back home for like, I don't know how long, a few days, maybe a few hours, I don't know. And then
Right.
Goro showed up. He's like, who the hell is that? He got his powers and then was like, I have to go back to his family, and then just abandoned them again. Like, what? Dog.
Right. So that was what I was thinking of with, like, his lack of an arc. They have no scene at, like, the one real choice that he makes. Well, he makes a couple, but one of the biggest choices he makes in the movie is when he stops training and goes back to his family. And after that happens, like, we don't even have a scene of him reuniting and being like, oh, were you, like, did you win, Dad? No, I just kind of, like, quit. Like, they didn't have any scene of him debriefing with that disappointment. And that, like, it felt like they should have done that, I think.
Well, his family was just a plot device, Evan. They didn't...
Oh, for sure. Like, they basically turn his wife and daughter into two separate damsels in distress, and that's about it.
Did he even need two? He could have just shaved it down to one if they wanted to. Honestly.
Yeah, I don't think it's really better or worse that it's 2 versus 1. Like, it's kind of the same thing. It's just like, we already talked about, like, his arc, but I rarely say this, but I kind of think this would have benefited from having, like, following a little more of those, like, 3-act structured beat sheets.
Mm-hmm.
Like, basically the end of Act 2, like, low point happens, and then we get right into the climax. Mm-hmm. Like, we have no scenes in between, like, oh god, like, this is, like, the low point of the movie. Nope. Immediately, Cole is coming up with, like, all right, this is how we're gonna beat it. We have no... Like, there's barely any mourning for... I think that was right after Liu Kang died.
Kung Lao.
Like, Kung Lao, sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was right after Kung Lao died. We didn't really have a mourning period for him. I think there was, like, a quick moment.
Oh, no. Anyway, it was that meme.
Yeah, like, there was... The pacing of it really, like, felt off, and I think it took away from the drama. I've kind of alluded to this so far already, but, like, I think this really would have benefited from some kind of thematic core. I'm going to put an asterisk on it because I don't know that this is a movie that needs it more than others, but, like, I'm going to basically rephrase what I talk about in the video on A Star Is Born. Like, having a strong emotional or thematic core at the center of your movie really does elevate everything else. It might not stand out necessarily the first time, but I think the fact that this movie doesn't have that does cheapen certain moments.
Like making it about family or something?
Maybe, but, like, just having something there. Like, I think the scene where Cole gets his Arcana could be a really powerful scene if it meant something for him, and if they had developed that, like, in some way, and like, it represented a character change for him. As it was almost just like, it was like a video game. It was like, you've unlocked your Arcana.
I like thinking he was confused in that moment. He was like, what the fuck is this shit? Okay.
Yeah,
and then
exactly.
just runs at him, like...
Like, I know it's not your favorite movie, Jelani, but there's a reason why a movie that references video games a lot, Scott Pilgrim, Scott earns the power of love. Like, it's an emotional thing both times. It shows a character change. Like, it's making a video game reference, but it's inside of a big character moment. Like, instead, Cole just earns the suit that, like, he got to 5 million HP or something. Cool, right. Now he's got it.
Go through something traumatic and you unlock it. That's good.
Yeah. I think, like, in a lot of cases, I think it's rare to see a movie that is completely devoid of, like, any kind of thematic core. I think there's a lot that really half-ass it, and, like, it's not they're kind of faking it and it's not really there, but they're acting like it is. This felt like a rare example where they weren't even really trying.
They could have made it about Bonds. That would have been an interesting one. Sonya Jax, Kano, Cabal, Liu Kang, Kung Lao, Scorpion, and, well, that's a bad Bond, Scorpion and Sub-Zero. But I would have cared about that.
Yeah, they had opportunities to put a thematic core in this. And, they didn't have to go nuts with it. They don't have to make, like, this huge revolutionary arc. They could do something really simple. And I think it would have made some of those moments more resonant.
Right.
So,
like, if it was about bonds or family, like that fight between Cole and Scorpion versus Sub-Zero would have felt more impactful, I think.
yeah, like, we barely even had any acknowledgement of, like Scorpion's his father, right? Or some kind of ancestor.
Like great something great.
Okay.
Continued.
In any case, like, it's many generations, but there's still a familial connection between them, and they don't do anything with it. Like, I think this is just a testament to, like, you can decide to have no thematic core in your movie, but this is what you're gonna get. You're gonna get action scenes that might be decent, but they're gonna be better if you have something at the center of it.
Did you notice that Scorpion was speaking Japanese to Cole at the end? And Cole just had a confused look about him.
I think someone I was watching it with commented on that. They were just like, why is he doing that? Cole doesn't speak Japanese.
And then he says, get over here.
In clean, pure English. And this man just went straight back to Japanese, never explained. I think that's
I was
funny.
wondering that in the opening, too, because it said in the subtitles like that they were switching from Chinese to Japanese. So I was like, okay, that's got to be significant for some reason. And then it just, like, I didn't think too hard about it, but I did notice it. I was like,
I think,
I was thinking maybe,
Chinese,
like, this
right?
is maybe for, like, obviously this isn't just made for American audiences. So, like, if you did speak one of those languages, it wouldn't play the same.
Mm-hmm.
I still wasn't sure why they were doing that in that scene, because the characters didn't seem to be reacting to it like they did understand some things and didn't with others. And if that was happening, it was too much for me to track personally.
Also, Scorpion took his mask off at least 3 times once Sub-Zero was beaten. It didn't seem like there was a reason for him to do that. Does the actor have a contract for showing his face for a certain amount of time? Like,
yeah, it definitely felt like the Amazing Spider-Man. He takes his mask off every 2 seconds, bro.
was that in the first one? I believe it, but
I was just talking about that series in general. I don't remember which movie.
I believe it.
Because I watched that fight scene back yesterday, and in that fight with some, I think it was 3 or 4 times, like you said, he took it off. He's like, remember my face?
Yep.
Take care of my bloodline. And something else he said.
Yeah, I saw were there some topics we missed that you wanted to touch on?
I had some quick points. I wasn't going to delve deep into them. I think we covered most of the things I had. I want to give a quick homage to the actor for Scorpion. I apologize if I'm pronouncing his name wrong. I think it's Hiroki Sanada. He does tournaments with sword fighting, and he's really well placed, and he has won a bunch of them. I don't have his resume in front of me, but I remember before they casted him that they said the reason why they casted him was because of, like, how proficient he is with the sword. And many fans know that that's, like, Scorpion's main feature. There was a good Easter egg I loved in the movie where remember when Kano was getting swept by Liu Kang?
Oh, yeah, the MK1
Yeah.
tactics.
So, Evan, that's like in the original Mortal Kombat games, there's a sweep move that you can, like, spam and continuously, like, chip away at their health, a good amount of damage. And the only way to avoid it is to jump at the right time or block it low. So, funny enough, people would usually be like, yo, is that all you can do? You spam the same move over and over again? So when Kano says, is that all you got? I thought it was funny how they kind of paid that homage. I like how this movie did a lot more powers and fatalities compared to the original movies. And obviously, the costumes were more accurate to the games than the others. I really do wish that Sub-Zero Scorpion's costumes were a little bit more akin to the ninja-esque armor.
They were more black than anything. And they look like closer to samurai armor.
Exactly. And I think I'll accept it for the first movie, but for the sequel, when they bring in the new Sub-Zero, I would like to see more ninja-looking costumes. Last thing I want to say, for Sub-Zero's costume being dark, I was looking up an interview about it, and I've assumed that if you're a fan of the game, you would know that they were hinting at him becoming Noob Saibot. In the game, Sub-Zero dies by Scorpion and becomes a ninja called Noob Saibot, who wears a black ninja outfit. and his whole dark personality twists within himself when he's in another realm or hell, and he comes back as a specter, kind of like Scorpion, but he's a lot more evil. And obviously his dark costume was hinting at his humanity being eaten away by his evilness, and that's why at the end when he ripped it off, it kind of was shown that his whole humanity and whatever he had left was gone. So I thought that was kind of poetic. That's what they were talking about in the interview I was reading about him.
Every time we saw black smoke in the movie, for some reason, it was either my brother or my dad, they kept asking, Noob Saibot? I was like, how is that even possible if Bihan's not dead yet?
Yeah.
Wait, let's do video game movie as a whole and then jump into your sequel thing.
Let's do it.
So the actor for Jax, Mehcad Brooks, said this was the best video game movie, hands down, no question about it, and other things he said that solidified his opinion. Thoughts?
I haven't seen Sonic, but my favorite video game adaptation is probably live action adaptation is Detective Pikachu.
I think this is the first video game movie I've seen.
So I'm going to list off a few that I remembered off the top. Detective Pikachu, Sonic, I never saw Sonic. The Super Mario Brothers I wrote John Lasagna because I don't remember how to spell his actual name. Leguizamo. Warcraft and Assassin's Creed. I think those were.
All right, Warcraft.
Also.
Was Warcraft live action? I didn't see it.
I think it's live action the way that the Disney reboots are live action.
I mean, there were
Most
humans in
are
that.
CGI, but I think you would technically call it live action.
There were humans in that, right?
Probably.
I
I
never
didn't see it.
I just
But
remember.
I think you would call it live action on a technicality.
I'm gonna agree with Ahsan. Detective Pikachu was fire, and I don't know if I'd watch Detective Pikachu over Mortal Kombat. I'd honestly say I'd probably watch both, and I'm definitely going to rewatch Mortal Kombat. I agreed with what my dad said after we saw the movie. We were complaining for a good half hour about everything that was wrong with it because he's like a diehard fan and he doesn't like things to be super changed from the source material. He would not stop talking about what was changed in Endgame, like Professor Hulk. He was so pissed off about it he would not stop talking about that. But even after, like we joked, even after us complaining for a half hour straight after the movie on his way out the door, I was like, I'm still probably gonna watch it again. He was like, oh yeah, for sure. And and he said that watching it a second time would either solidify the opinions we had forming from this first watch, or we would soften up because, it's Mortal Kombat. So for anybody that's listening, why I'm so passionate and talkative about it is because it's in my top 3 video game franchises of all time, along with God of War and Uncharted. So answering my own question, I don't think this is number 1. I would put Detective Pikachu over this as far as just movies go. And video game movies, I think Detective Pikachu was a better video game movie, because it was based off of a source material. Plus, Pokemon is awesome. I've been playing a lot of Pokemon recently. It's real good. Anything else on video game movies?
I like the fact that the cast is very diverse. I feel like a lot of times,
Yes.
a lot of video game movies, they try to especially the original Mortal Kombat movies, they try to Americanize the cast. If memory serves correct, I don't want to speak out of turn, but this cast is very much diverse.
Reptile wasn't even a real reptile in the original, bro. Can you believe that?
Bad reptile representation.
Authentic Japanese and Chinese casting, African American casting, a lot of women of color. There was only Sonya. No, Melina was a woman of color. She's black. And yeah, I was surprised that they didn't Americanize rating like they do in the game. So I was really happy about that. I know his accent was hard to understand, but
Yep.
I would rather them do that and be authentic to what they were trying to go for than them trying to do what they do usually
With
in
like
Hollywood. So
any Egyptian movie where they put white people in tan
Exactly.
makeup. Come on, bro.
Yeah, I was really happy to see that.
Yes. Good added point. Anything else before we jump into sequel stuff?
I think the reputation around video game movies, it's mostly negative from what I've heard. So I think because of that, I was bracing myself for this to be worse than it ended up being. Also, I think I think one of them, I think it's the sequel to the original Mortal Kombat movie,
Annihilation. Yep.
Is
Oh,
that
boy.
I've seen that's on like the IMDb bottom 100.
Boy.
So I was like, this is a pretty low, like the floor for this is low. Like it could be very bad.
I think that's why I saw so
based
many
on-
pleased
yeah.
fans, because the last thing they had was Annihilation. So.
Yeah, I don't know anything about it except for the one line, like the one
Was it
dialogue
Sindel?
exchange that's
With Mother.
like,
Too
I
bad
don't know
you
who it is. Mother
will die.
Yes. Too bad you will die.
I'm not even going to speak that name during this podcast.
Sorry.
He look like that. This man looks like a toddler, bro. He looks like a jacked toddler, bro. He looks like he walked up to Raiden and said, "Mom said it's my turn on the Xbox, bro."
Oh my gosh, that's funny. Yeah, that statue of Shao Kahn in the movie was like almost 1-to-1.
Oh
accurate
yeah,
of the
for
game.
sure.
Yeah.
I'm excited to see him in the sequel, if there is one. I do hope there is a sequel. But let's get
I
into
do
the sequel
too.
topics. Yeah.
Before I delve into like my theory, I want to quickly ask you guys. We don't have to go too deep. Do you think Mortal Kombat would serve better as an animated CGI 3D movie in theaters, or would you rather see a live action? I have my personal answer, but I'm curious of what you guys think.
I would rather the 2D, to be honest. I
Like the one
loved
that just came out?
Scorpion's Revenge, bro. That was fire. That movie was... Scorpion's my favorite character from the series, and with it being called Scorpion's Revenge, Bro.
That had really good art style.
I love
So
everything. Everything.
If it went the animated route, I personally would either like that, but what my mind went to was like, the cutscenes of Mortal Kombat 11.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking something akin to that, where it's like you see them in full 3D rendering. I know that
Okay.
takes a lot of time and money, but that's where my mind went. Because for me, I think Mortal Kombat is something where like it's so supernatural with the powers and like the flips and the acrobatics that you kind of benefit from being animated. But at the same time, it's like rooted in a somewhat sense of reality. Like you cut someone's head off, a head will fall like to the ground and bounce because of gravity and like realistic physics, just like it would in real life. So that's why for me, I would like to see it be done well in a live action. Like I still have that itch where I want to see it. Like I think it's still possible to be done in a good live action format. And I feel like this movie, like it's scratching the surface of what it could be, and it hasn't really quite captured that. And I feel like it's still possible. So that's why like I'm still holding out hope. But if a sequel disappoints me, I think from here on out they should go the animated route.
If you could rate this movie 1 out of 10 without using 7, what would you give it?
Like not using the number 7.
Yep.
Well, it's not an 8.
5.5 for me. I'd watch it again, but only if I had to.
I don't know, man. Because for me, like, as much as gripes as I have with it, I enjoyed what I watched. Like, I can recognize and be objective that it's not a great movie, but I think for me, because it's like a source material that I've been following since I was like in kindergarten, that I have like a little bit of bias, and I enjoyed some of the little things in it. So I would either 6 is the number I'm probably gonna go with.
I'd say
honestly.
6 as well. But if 7 was on the list, would you give it a 7?
I think 7's a little too high for some of the gripes I had with it.
Yeah.
I definitely wouldn't. 5.5 is my.
No, I know
number,
Evan wasn't
no matter
going
what.
higher. I didn't think Evan would even go that high.
Yeah, I was actually surprised. Like, one of my friends I watched it with actually commented after, like, I think this is one of the only movies that you like better than me. Because he tends to be a lot more... well, he tends to have a much higher tolerance than me, although that's not saying much. I think I have a below average tolerance. For,
I mean, you like Inception,
things.
so... I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Get out of here with that.
Always gotta have the Inception joke
you-
shoved in there somewhere.
You know what though, like some people actually that's one of the only things I actually have like a higher tolerance of. A lot of people check out of that. So
Nolan films?
well, Inception in particular too,
Oh.
because it just gets so complicated. Anyway, that's sort of beside the point. But like my rating of it is not super high.
That's fine.
Wish I was there for that conversation.
It wasn't all that long. You'd also just kind of have to know like what this friend of mine is into a little more to like have the context. But
I meant Inception, but I got you.
The Inception conversation is ongoing with me. I am never it's always on the tip of my tongue. So.
It's like Chase with JoJo, Ahsan.
Got it.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's what it is. But yeah, I do want to see a sequel. As many gripes as I have, I want to see Mortal Kombat succeed. I don't ever want to see it fail. I love this franchise, so
Top 5.
I want it to keep going. I am excited to see more from it. This was, out of the 3 movies we've had Ahsan on for so far, this was my most looked forward to movie. I am a little disappointed, but I'm glad to have seen it. I am more looking forward, strangely enough, to the Suicide Squad movie out in the summer. I really want to see that. That looks like a hell of a good time.
That might be the best movie out of
Unironically,
pop culture movies.
Mm-hmm.
For a sequel, I could see them going the route of recruiting Johnny Cage, Kenshi, Nightwolf, and maybe
Kenshi,
Yang.
bro, that's one of my favorites too.
And I could see them going to the route of Lin Kuei, so maybe Cyrax, Sector, and Smoke, because that was Bai Han's last words.
Mm-hmm.
I think that kind of, convolutes the plot a little bit, so maybe that's like an Easter egg at the very end.
What if we see Hydro? Or Tundra? Wait, no, that was Sub-Zero's name. That was Kuai Liang's name before, right?
Yeah, I'd be down for Hydro. I'd be down for that.
Tremor.
But don't do like Natara, like how you kill him off really easily. For those who are listening, Johnny Cage is the character teased at the very end. Kenshi is a blind swordsman. Nightwolf is like a Native American warrior. He was teased in the film. He was on that newspaper clipping with the face paint. And Kuai Liang is like the second good guy Sub-Zero. That's
his brother.
Many know from. Yeah, that's the one you played through from Mortal Kombat 2 onwards. Probably Shao Kahn or Outworld invades because the story goes Shang Tsung loses the 9th tournament or the 10th tournament and Shao Kahn takes over and bends the rules. So maybe we see that, or maybe we see Shang Tsung become the main villain.
I think we'll definitely see Katana in the sequel because their fans were in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
They were like, hey, what up? We're here too. But we never actually see Katana or hear her name mentioned. But I'm looking forward to seeing more from it. I want to see them succeed. And I definitely want to see more of Joe as either Sub-Zero or Noob Saibot in the future, and more of Kano. I never thought I'd ever say that ever, and I feel dirty for saying it aloud. But
yeah, I feel you. I just hate Kano and every other. But in this movie, he redeemed himself. He still has a lot of way to go for me.
Yeah, I don't. Do you think he's dead?
So that's the thing. I think Melina and Goro for sure are gonna come back. Maybe in the 3rd movie if they do that. But as far as Kano, I feel like the fans is going to be the sole reason why he comes back. I really don't think he's going to be dead because of fan feedback.
I don't understand. First of all, I don't understand how the gnome killed him. It went through, like, that should not have killed him. The hat was not that long or that pointy, to be honest. Mm-hmm. And she stabbed it in his eye. He still has the eye socket before it reaches his brain, so that shouldn't have... Maybe the shock it should have just realistically just knocked him out. I guess, but
low-key, that might be how he gets his face plant, because it was stabbed through his eye. Yeah.
It's possible. I also want to, as ridiculous as it is, I want to see him do the Kano ball at some point.
Yeah, I would be down, because they're going to make it so it's like seems so ridiculous, and like they're going to play it off. I feel like
better than a fucking fireball.
Yeah. His Shang Tsung's quote about how death is like a portal or another port. What did he say? Do you remember his exact words?
Death is but another portal, I think.
Yeah, that's essentially alluding that like none of these villains are essentially written off, and even the director said that death doesn't mean the end for anybody. So I don't know.
That's just the franchise in general too.
Exactly. So with that being said, we could expect to see probably most, if not all, these villains return. And Evan, I was talking to Jay before we recorded that. A lot of the villains they killed off, they picked villains that, like, if this was, like, the last movie they could do, they wanted to make sure they could go hard or go home. And they didn't go hard, but they killed them off and did the fatalities and stuff like that. But I feel like they did it to show that, we need to do this to say that, this is what we can do. So, and they also did it so there's no repercussions. Like, everyone they killed off, they could bring back if they wanted to. So it's like, they kind of did, like, a little Chico with it. They didn't kill Shang Tsung.
Sounds like it.
I feel like every time a non-Mortal Kombat game, like any different form of media, comes out, they're trying to show what they can do, but nobody ever picks up the project, like with Legacy and the short film.
Yeah.
Warner Brothers, there's money in this, bro. What y'all doing?
Yeah, I thought Scorpion's Revenge would kind of like prove it.
I want to see more from them. Like, do Noob Saibot's Revenge or something. Like, that'd be cool to see.
I feel you.
Oh, also, Ahsan, did you catch the Easter egg where they mentioned the fighter Eddie Tobias?
I did at the beginning. Yeah, I did.
Like,
I was on Twitter. I saw someone said there was a Striker reference on Cabal's costume, and I cannot find the tweet for the life of me right now.
what the hell would it be?
I don't know.
Police brutality?
I don't know. Striker was a police officer that Jay mentioned earlier. That
The
one,
straight up cop that has no powers whatsoever.
yeah, the corny character.
I mean, mocap in Armageddon was better than him, Ahsan.
That's sad.
I thought when I first saw, I didn't know Stryker before Armageddon, and when I saw him in Armageddon, I thought he was the coolest looking and designed character. But then I saw all he could do was throw bombs and stuff. I was like, what the hell is this?
Did you see him in Mortal Kombat 3?
Yes.
He was like a.
Oh, man. He looks like a parody character you'd see in like one of those really bad spoof movies.
He does. Evan, if we're nerding you out, man, just stop us.
No, it's cool. I mean, this is the Mortal Kombat thing. You guys know a lot more about it than me, so you know, this is where to talk about Mortal Kombat stuff.
Appreciate you guys for listening. What's the future episodes, Evan? What we got? Boilerplate, all that.
Yeah, next episode we're gonna do Get Out. We have merchandise with the logo. You can find our products linked in the show notes. We have a Patreon. Come support us there. We have some bonus content on there, episodes on Tenet, Spider-Man trilogy, and more that are going to be coming. Our logo is by Kelsey Hendry. We have our YouTube channel. We have video essays, and the old podcasts are being uploaded on there one by one. You can follow the show on Twitter at INTAnalysis18. I am on Twitter at Davos Watson. And where can people find you aside from the streets, Ahsan, like you've been mentioning the past couple times?
You beat me to it, man. I was actually going to drop the IG this time. So, yeah, yo, find me on the streets. If you see me, head nod. I'll nod right back. You know how that go. But if you social distancing like you're supposed to, you can find me on IG at Ahsan Naazim. That's AHSANNAAZIM. But catch me on the streets, though.
You can find me on Twitter at Jelani T. Kelly, Instagram at Base Phoenix, Twitch at JBase Phoenix, and I posted a skit on like Insta and YouTube recently, so go watch that. It's
yeah,
like
2 of them. They're both pretty good. I've watched both of them.
I appreciate that, Adam.
I've been on social media. I'm going to check out the second one.
But yeah, thank you guys for listening, and we're out.
See you guys next time.
Peace.